All right, I think we are recording. Yeah, it is recording. Okay, great. And let me share my screen. Let's hit slideshow. All right, well, so this is a part of the elevatED workshop series that we run from the academic technologies and online learning, so A2L. And this is the third workshop under the elevatED workshop series on AI. And I think we'll have a few more coming our way. And we'll have a break from now until the January. So there will be a little break in between. And so today's topic is reimagining assessments in the age of generative AI. My name is Jose Diaz. I'm the Director of Academic Technologies and Online Learning at CityTech. That's my email address if you wish to reach out to me. And we also have now our YouTube channel. I am going to share the slides with everyone. And so if you click on that link, you will see all the videos that we have from our workshops. And also you can subscribe so you don't have to wait for me to send you a reminder that our videos are up. So you can do that directly from there. But I have to remind myself to share the slides at the end. So I got to remind myself. All right. And again, this is just a link. If you click on the slides, if you click on this link, it will take you to our YouTube channel. And so I want to start the presentation with an interesting article that I saw, I think it's 4 days or 5 days ago on the New York Times. And it was titled AI Chatbots Defeated Doctors at Diagnosing Illness. And I thought it was such a great article because or a study, because it showed they basically gave doctors a select few access to ChatGPT, and then those that didn't have access to ChatGPT, and then a third group which was just ChatGPT alone without any human, without a combination of human and ChatGPT. So there's three entities in this study. And what was interesting to me was that ChatGPT alone was able to detect 90% of illnesses. And that's just ChatGPT alone. And then the second group, doctors with ChatGPT, were able to detect 76% of illnesses. The third group was just doctors alone. And that group was able to do 74%. And what I found interesting is that there isn't much of a difference between the 74 and 76%. But in the article, the person who was conducting the study, quote, in my quotes here, few knew how to exploit the abilities of chatbots. As a result, they failed to take advantage of the AI system. And so that's where you see a huge disparity between the 90% of ChatGPT alone and ChatGPT with humans. We were basically the addition of adding a human to the mix was really making the process a lot worse. So from 90 to 76, and you can see it's a huge drop from the 90 to the 76. And I think, and I outlined that quote because I think it's so important, right? It kind of makes sense for us as educators that our students are eventually going to go into the field, and in most cases, depending on what they're studying, once they graduate and they're done with the 4 years, the field might be completely different than what it currently is. And then when they graduate, they might not have the knowledge and the capability, the skills to adapt to the new environment that it's so rapidly changing. And so I wanted to just start with that because I think it's such an interesting article based on what we do as educators. And this quote I think it's in every presentation, and I never used it yet, but I said I have to use it once because everyone else uses it. So AI is not going to replace humans, but humans who know how to use AI are going to replace humans who don't know how to use AI. So I had to put that in there because everywhere I go, I see a presentation. Someone has to plug that in there. But just to go along with the article, I want to do a quick recap of our last workshop on the assessments, right? I think with workshop number 1, we talked about assessments, and we were the workshop was basically about how can AI help me develop assessments that I can just easily export and upload into my Brightspace course. So this will be a quick overview of that workshop. So if you didn't attend that workshop, it might not be a review for you. Basically, we were talking about what's the difference between formative assessments and summative assessments. And these are basically the same slides that I use, so I'm going to go real quick through them. And we talked about the differences between the two, and formative assessments helps track students' progress and offer continuous feedback, right? You're looking for those teachable moments in the formative assessments. And then in the summative assessments, it's more like, okay, well, you did all those formative assessments. Now show me that that you learned something and you can demonstrate that knowledge to me, right? And that's the last chance. And then we talked about some examples of formative assessments usually are low stakes, right? Helps students recognize where they are struggling. So it helps the faculty member understand where they're struggling, right? We call those muddiest points. And allows opportunity for feedback. So the students can take that feedback and improve. We talked about teachable moments, quizzes, right? And then we talked about summative assessments. These are the high stakes. One attempt to demonstrate competency, like a midterm or a final. And then the last slide we talked about was the example of a chef and somebody who's learning to become a chef, and they've gone through all those formative assessments, and now they had the soup. They feel that they have the perfect recipe for the soup. They can cook the soup, and now it's time to have the chief chef taste it and tell you, okay, this needs a little bit more salt or this or that. And then from there you then serve that soup to real customers, right? That would be your summative assessment. So with that overview of what we covered in assessments, I just want to talk about how assessments are the disruption of AI in our world in assessments. It really has, for me, in my 17, 18 years working as in higher ed, I've never seen any disruption as big as this, right? Maybe when COVID hit, where we went to remote teaching, but I feel like this is really pushing us to really reimagine how assessments look like, because we're seeing it all around us. We're seeing how students, everyone's asking, oh my gosh, how can what tools out there so I can check for when students are using ChatGPT and that sort of thing. And what we're seeing is a lot of universities have begun integrating generative AI, right? We're seeing one I keep a close eye is ASU, Arizona State University. We're seeing, what they've been doing, Wharton, Texas, Nebraska. So it's happening, right? So these universities are adopting, and they're the early adopters, right? And so a lot of these universities are either and I got this picture, the screenshot from the OpenAI website under the ChatGPT EDU enterprise version. And so we as educators have to ask ourselves, has generative AI broken the traditional assessments, right? We're seeing students who are, looking at the assignment and they're just going straight to ChatGPT, putting in a prompt. The ChatGPT generates a prompt. They're copying and pasting and just spitting out exactly what the language, the LLM is producing, and they're just copying and pasting into the assignment without even doing anything. That's all they're doing, copying and pasting. And the assessments are not quantifying what a student has learned. And so that's breaking the tradition, and it's breaking what we talked about in the last workshop, is that assessments have to closely align with our learning objectives, right? So that alignment between learning objectives and assignments have to exist. And so I think it's breaking that relationship between the assignment and the learning objectives. But there's also problems with generative AI, as we all know. We've seen cases where the classic example of the lawyer who went to ChatGPT and was trying to ask ChatGPT for information on a case, and then eventually it spit out all these cases that he then took into the courtroom, and he looked like a fool. And it was really embarrassing for that person because all the cases that ChatGPT spit out were hallucinations, right? They weren't real cases. And also the other thing is lack of control, right? Sometimes it's difficult to get the desired outcome that you're looking for, and sometimes when we're prompt engineering, right? And also there's biases in the data that these large language models were trained. So that these are some problems. And also the equity gap, right? Not everyone has access to ChatGPT Pro and those higher end models that are better trained. And so there is an equity gap there. And so, one of the things that I do in part of my responsibility is to meet one-on-one with faculty and talk and discuss and help. As an as a instructional designer, we're always meeting with faculty and and helping faculty with their courses. And through my experience with faculty and speaking to them, I felt that I've been to so many workshops on generative AI from other educators, but I never have seen a framework. I've yet to see something that helps me as an instructor reimagine what an assignment can look like. So I took it upon myself to put some of a framework together that might help you. And so just for me, this is something that's evolving, and it's not something that it's taken me several months to put together. And so I've been working on this. It's been on my mind for a long time, and so it's a work in progress. That's what I'm trying to say. This is a work in progress, as we know, things are moving so fast that any moment, any of this stuff can change. And so I came up with this RMAPS. I had to come up with something that's easy to remember. And we're going to use a magnifying glass, and we're going to look through the lens of the 6 lenses. We're going to go through each of these and look closely at what each of how an assessment can reimagine through the 6 lenses. And so the first one we have is reconfigure difficulty. And then we're going to go into value added, multimodal, authenticity, project-based learning or experiential learning. And then we're going to talk about scaffolding. And my definition of scaffolding might not be the traditional definition of scaffolding. So when we get to scaffolding, I'll explain a little more. And so the first one is how can we reconfigure the difficulty of an assessment? And the first problem is, okay, traditionally I would say to my computer students that here is an assignment, and you just have to design a menu for an app that we're developing, right? And so now with the existence of generative AI, we can simply go to these tools and ask for the tool to actually code for us the menu for an app. All right, and so knowing that students can now use these tools to do basically the assignment that how it was traditionally, we have to rethink the rigor of the assessment, because as when calculators became available, we realized, oh, they can just type in the calculator, get an answer. How can we reconfigure the difficulty in those assignments? So, for example, for this case, where can your students add value at a higher level in critical thinking? So if your students are are coding to develop or create that menu for a phone app, we have to now go a little further because they can simply go into many of these tools and just generate the code. So now I would ask, well, you can use AI to help you write and debug the code for the menu on the phone app. But now let's take it a little further, right? Let's say now you have to collect data and to analyze that menu, right? How can you improve? Are there problems? How's the user experience? How are the users who are using the menu on this app navigating? Is it causing a bottleneck, right? So that's really where I feel the how we now reconfigure and reimagine these assessments. We gotta now, as we bring generative AI into the mix, how can we, which is the next item, which is how can we add the value? Where can value be added above what ChatGPT and these other language models are doing for us, right? So we need to quantify student added value to the assignment beyond copying and pasting whatever ChatGPT spits out. And so what is the student's contribution to the submission? Now, again, I I don't want to sound like I am promoting. I'm trying to play neutral here because I know there's faculty members who are not welcoming the idea or not welcoming ChatGPT or generative AI into the assessment. So I'm just asking, what if? And think about it, that what if you were to do that, and how you were to think if you were to bring in ChatGPT or generative AI into your assessments. And so I guess now, if you do bring generative AI into your classroom, you got to ask yourself, where in the assignment can you add that value-added part? Where can the students now, in collaboration and working together with generative AI, where is that cherry on the top, right? That the student now has to take what is being provided from generative AI, and then how to perform that higher level thinking and take it above and beyond just that. Okay, here's the code that ChatGPT gave me for this menu for my app, and just spit it back and regurgitate that to the professor. That's not going to cut it, right? So that's where I feel like we need to up the game, right? We got to increase the difficulty and also focus on the higher level learning. The other item that we want to focus on is, what about multimodal forms of expression? And this is more a little bit on the humanities side, where it's really hitting hard because now even the paper-based assessments, right? Students can just copy and paste the assignment, drop it into, again, generative AI, and see what it spits out. So I ask, what if we allow opportunities of multimodal expression beyond the traditional paper-based assignment, such as poetry, music, video, art, or even presentation? Because then it becomes much more of an authentic, much more authentic that way. Now, am I saying that we get rid of completely the writing part? That's not what I'm saying. That's not exactly what I'm saying. So I'm going to give some examples of, I hope the audio worked. Let me see. I think I did share with audio, but you guys tell me if you don't hear any audio. So the first example is from a digital storytelling assignment. And in this assignment, we had the students, they could use generative AI, but they had to use it for ideation. I mean, there were restrictions as to how they could use it. And then from there, they actually had to cite the source and then write the paper on their own based on the information that was given to them from their research using ChatGPT. And then from there, they would then create a video, almost like a research or documentary style video. So let me show you the first one. Oh, so okay, so actually, so before I show you the videos, what we did was we used a tool called Padlet, and basically we created columns for every student. And then here you can see the paper that was generated. And one thing I do wish I could add was maybe I should have added where students would add what they got from ChatGPT, then show the paper written, and then the video, and the three parts process. So in this case, I'm missing that first part, but let's imagine it's there. But lesson learned, right? As we move forward, this is all process of learning. And so I'll randomly pick one of these. I'm not sure which one was good. I can't remember anymore. It's been a while. Let's try this one. So in this case, the students had to develop, they had to create their own company. This is a fashion course, and they had to develop their own company and talk about the fashion and how they would brand themselves, or this company would be branded. So let me show you one video real quick. And so keep in mind, the video is based from all the research on ChatGPT, and then the student writing the actual paper or script, we were calling it at the time, and then creating the video.
Hi, my name is Alice Chen, and today we're going to talk about the sustainable fashion brand, Goto.
Can you guys hear the sound? Let me make it a little higher.
This company was established in 2006 by Goshia Piatek, and this is dedicated to bring about positive changes by protecting the environment and preserving humanity in all products and management. Combined with fair trade, organic cotton, and circular design, Goto Clothing highlighting the strategy for sustainability by using these guiding principles.
All right, I'm not sure if the audio is coming through, but I'll stop there because I will share the slides with everyone, and so you'll have access to these videos so you can watch them on your own. The second example I want to show is pretty much similar, so I won't share this because it's also videos, right? So these are videos produced by students. In this case, they were designing, they were talking about the journey of a garment from the beginning till the end, to the final product. And so in this case, we asked the students we said to them, pretend you are a content creator, like a YouTuber, and tell us the journey of a garment from the beginning to the end. And the beauty of this was that we didn't have to teach them Premiere Pro or Final Cut or any of those fancy tools, which will take, several weeks for us to train them. And the goal was for us to focus on the subject matter. In this case was, tell us about the garment and how it's created and what were the textiles used and everything else, and from the process of beginning to the end. And let me show you one more example. And this is an example of storyboarding that led to a jingle. So in this case, we're using Padlet, and students were using the storyboarding was being done so they can learn from each other. They were able to see each other's work. And so here's an example of this student specifically was already storyboarding their video from the beginning to the end. So here's frame 1, here's frame 2. And so they were developing or storyboarding the video that way, which then led to the actual jingle that they had to write. This is for a marketing course. I think it was copywriting. So I think it was a copywriting course. And this is an actual student submission.
Bombarded with emails 24/7. Just 2 more emails that I'm done.
Yeah, are you still checking emails?
Get to see my kids home run.
You need to lay off checking your emails.
I know. I read an article in the New Yorker about how emails are making people miserable. I feel so much better not glued to my phone. Your emails can wait, your happiness can't.
So I love the humor that was brought into it. This is actual students, right? Creating these videos, and again, it didn't take much training to show them how to do these videos. And again, it's what we're looking for, authenticity, right? This is actual students creating the work that maybe when they graduate, this is probably what they would be doing, right? They might be writing jingles, or they might be copyright editors, or whatever it is, right? So that leads us to the next. Oh, right, authenticity, right? So it's a method of evaluating students' knowledge, right? And the skills by having them apply it in the real world settings. So one thing that I like to do when I'm working with faculty members is incorporating icebreakers in day one. Because with an icebreaker, it's not just an icebreaker that says, tell me your name and why did you take this course? And usually, those are the icebreakers that I normally see. I'm looking for something else. I want to learn about our students. I want to learn somewhat of their background, learning what motivates them, what are they interested in, where do they see themselves in the next 4 years, what do they want to do when they become grown-ups, right? And they're working as professionals. Because with that information, as an educator, that's going to help me tremendously. That information is going to help me make those learning hooks. It's going to help me create assessments that actually engage our students. So you might get students, a population, depending on what you teach, your subject matter, you're going to get students who might be coming from a completely different major, right? They're majoring in computer information, but let's say you're teaching English. But knowing that the majority of your students are computer students, you can then reimagine your assessments into something that is relatable to what they are interested in. And so icebreakers, I think, is a great way for you to gather information from your students, and from that information then develop lesson hooks and assessments. Well, with authenticity, we're asking students to show us what they have learned, right? So we're looking for, we all took driver's tests, and we had to sit down with somebody else who knew how to drive, and we had to demonstrate that we knew how to drive before we got our license. The same idea is in place. And so if you are somebody who's not looking at generative AI as something that you want to put in your classrooms, and you're teaching face-to-face classrooms, you might, do presentations where students actually get in front of the class and they speak and they tell you, and they present in front of the classroom. Or another thing I've started to see more of is faculty members who have students write their paper, but instead of students submitting the Word doc, they actually invite the professor, they do the share and invite as a collaborator the professor, so that now the professor can actually see the version control or history of the document. And then as a professor, you can, it's time consuming, because now you're looking at the history of the progress, right, of what the student's writing is. I'm seeing that. And then I'm also seeing professors who do use generative AI, who do allow generative AI in the classroom, but they ask students to cite where they're getting that information, and then they're looking really for the value added component that we talked about, right? What is that value added from the student, not what ChatGPT is spitting out. And then others are doing what we're calling now on the spot interviews, I guess, where you through the assessments, through the formative assessment, you're seeing that they're not getting it. And so you do those one-on-one with those students who you believe are not following the rules, and they're just spitting out whatever ChatGPT gives them. And I'm seeing a lot of that too, as a one-on-one interviews, to just make sure that the students are learning what they're supposed to. And then we go into P, project-based learning. And basically, it's a method of evaluating students' knowledge and skills by having them applied in real-world settings. So just like my example of the copywriting course, where this is what students are going to be doing when they graduate, right? They're going to be writing a script, and they might not be performing the script because someone else, they might hire voice actors for that and things of that nature, but have them actually do it, because it comes back to the authenticity that we're trying to gather here. We're trying to get we're trying to get our assignments to become much more authentic, right? And then the other value behind project-based learning is that when students understand that this is they need to learn, this is something that they need to know before they graduate, you're presenting them with the why, right? This is why. And a lot of times when I see assessments, I see that the why is missing in the assessment. They're not providing a why. And every time I see a professor who's forgetting to add the why into the assessment, I always go back to Mr. Miyagi from Karate Kid, right? And this always goes back to Mr. Miyagi because I don't know if anyone here has seen the movie. If you haven't, well, I have the video, you can watch it. But the scene that I'm referring to is when Daniel's son is, he's being bullied at school, and they're beating. There's kids in the school that are beating him up, and he gets frustrated. He gets a black eye. He comes home. He's frustrated. They break his bike, and he needs to find a way to. He needs a way to learn how to defend himself. And then he moves into his neighbor and new town, and the neighbor happens to be a martial artist, right, Mr. Miyagi. And so he finds out that Mr. Miyagi, his neighbor, knows karate, and so he wants to learn. And so he comes over and asks him to teach him how to defend himself because he's being bullied at school. And so Mr. Miyagi says, "Okay, well, I'll teach you, but you know what? You have to first paint my home, then you got to wash my cars, then you got to wax the floors, and then maybe I'll teach you some karate." But he never said the why, right? He never said he never explained to him that he was actually teaching him karate while he was doing all these chores. And in this scene, Daniel gets upset because Mr. Miyagi is going out for the night and celebrating, but he's stuck painting the walls, and he's stuck waxing the floor, and he's stuck washing the car when Mr. Miyagi gets to go out. So he gets frustrated. He goes, "You got me washing your car, you got me painting the walls, but you're not teaching me karate." And then he goes, "You've been learning karate all this time." And then he goes on to show, okay, show me wax on, show me wax off. And then in this scene, he basically shows that he really was learning karate, and he's able to defend himself, but he didn't know that he was learning because the why was never presented. So I always go back to Karate Kid as a good example. It's important for us as educators to let our students understand that there's a reason why I'm making you go through this hell. And when you're experiencing that hell is a good thing, right? Because it's tough. Learning is not supposed to be easy. Learning, there's a rigor behind. You know that learning is happening when you are feeling the pain. And this goes back to the first one, right? When we talked about reconfiguring the difficulty. And so there has to be pain in learning. We're not through osmosis, we're gonna get a book and just put it under a pillow and sleep through the night, and all the information in the book is gonna go transfer over to our brain through osmosis. That doesn't happen, right? I tried it in high school, it didn't work. So that's important. And then you can watch the video on your own, but basically that's the scene that I just described. I was afraid that, since the audio is not too loud, but if you get a chance, when I share the slides, watch the video, and it's here, and you click on the link, it'll play that video for you. All right, and this is the last one, scaffolding. And I believe it's not really the traditional definition of what we as educators call scaffolding. Scaffolding, the traditional definition of scaffolding really means that, well, I'm going to teach my students the basics, and I have guardrails to help them understand the basics. And then as we move into higher level thinking, then we remove the guardrails because they've got that foundation. That's not quite exactly what I'm referring to here. What I'm talking about here is more like continuous learning, right? So let's say we provide a visual guide to the semester-long process, including all the formative assessments and all the summative assessments displayed in a linear timeline. And each item is supporting the other. And it's a semester-long process that builds from the foundation up. So in the sense, a little bit different, what I usually hear, scaffolding. Here, what I'm talking about is these are assessments, formative assessments, and summative assessments that are predetermined already ahead of time, and the students see it as a timeline. It's a visual timeline, because a lot of the times when we ask our students what is the process, they have no idea. They don't have no understanding of, okay, this is the reason why I'm showing you this, because we're going to move on to this, and then you need to know this before we move on to the next higher level topic. And so a lot of the students are left surprised when there's a final, and now you got 1 week to put together this big project. And this is the opposite of that, right? So this is basically you're guiding them through a semester-long process, continuous learning that eventually leads to the summative assessment. But everything that you did from the beginning till then will help build that final project or that summative assessment. So here's an example, because I could just talk about it, but it might be hard to understand without a visual. Okay, and so here's the example number one. And again, these are links that once I share the slide with you, you can click on these and with on your own time, you can take a closer look at them. Okay, now this is from an actual course that I helped develop. And again, this is going back into fashion. I come from FIT, so there's a lot of fashion courses that I always talk about. But this is again using the same tool that we showed earlier. This is a Padlet. In this case, this is different because this Padlet is only visible it's specific to each individual student and their continuous learning through the semester. So this progress is happening between at the individual level, at the student level individually. And so here the professor is, as you can see from left to right, we are scaffolding, right? So here is your company, right? Give me your overview of what this company that you're dreaming about, what will it look like? What's your marketing approach? And what is it going to produce? What is it you're looking to make? What are some things in the news? Now keep in mind, some of these are formative assessments. These are some assignments that are happening throughout the semester. So in this column here, we're asking the student to go into, do research and go into the news and try to find market indicators that this brand or this product that you're looking to produce, it's in demand. So this is this part right here, analyzing the market trends, and then develop the product. Then we move into product reviews, promotional cadence, penetration percentage. Right, so now we're looking into the Excel and how's the market looking? How can I penetrate the market and sell through percentage? I mean, it goes on until we hit all the way to the far right, where now we start from seeing the progress. Now, from one snapshot view as a student, I can see everything I did through the semester. I can see my progress. I can see my growth. I can see where I'm going with this. I can see why my instructor, my professor told me I had to do some research in the news. What's going on in the news? How's the market looking? What's your company going to be about? Right? And so you see how the foundation leads to the progress going further into the semester. So this is what I refer to as continuous learning. And this is a way that you can scaffold your assignments, right? And allowing students to actually see the process, the full process in real time. And you see the growth in real time. And so this Padlet is only visible from professor to student, one-to-one relationship. All right. And so as a professor, you have access to all your individual students. And then in here, you can provide feedback directly for that specific student in real time, right? So real-time feedback. And example, I did example number 2. Oh, so this example number 2, very similar, right? So here's another example. And so the same idea applies, right? And again, you know, it's a little cleaner, but this assignment can be done and assigned to individual students, and then you see the growth, the individual growth from the beginning of the semester to the end of the semester. All right, and so that was my last. So we covered the reconfigure difficulty. We talked about how if we do allow generative AI into the classroom, into our assignments, we obviously have to increase the difficulty. We got to look for much more now, because if we're allowing ChatGPT and allowing students to use ChatGPT, they can bring in a lot of that knowledge. But what we're looking for is how can they take that knowledge, up the game, analyze it, make it better, add that cherry on the top, and add and the toughest part is finding where those opportunities to add the value added. Because now, if you are going to incorporate ChatGPT into your assessment, you also have to do the assignment yourself so you can see where those opportunities are, right? Where is the opportunity for the student to add and make and add value to what they're getting from ChatGPT? So we have to increase the difficulty. We talked about multimodal forms of expression, right? So beyond the writing. And I didn't get to say this earlier, but I feel that there is a crutch beyond the humanities and other subject matters where everything is a paper, right? And especially the population who we serve at City Tech and CUNY, a lot of the students that you encounter are English is not the first language, right? They either come speaking other languages and they haven't mastered the language yet. So for them, there are limitations. They're hitting a wall in some way as to how much can they produce, because if you're limiting them to one modality as to writing, it might be more of a challenge for some people to express themselves in different, it's easier for them to express themselves through maybe poetry, through music, through a video. But along with the writing still has to be included, right? Because if you're going to do a video, we need some script. We need to be able to still write to do these jingles or the video or poetry or artwork. And then we're looking for authenticity, right? We're trying to get that authentic create that opportunity for students to produce authentic work, that it really is them, that they are actually putting an effort beyond copying and pasting from ChatGPT. And then again, project-based learning, or why if we know that some of our students are going to become, I don't know, coders, or going to be working in the health field, or going to be working in the food industry, how can, even though you're teaching an English class or something else that's not related to what eventually they were going to major in, how can we make our assessments relatable to our students, right? How can we meet them where they are and what their focus is on, which is graduating, let's say, with computer engineers diploma, but they still need to know how to write, right? And so I think relating with our students, find a way to learn more about your students, where are they coming from, what is their focus, what are they focusing on when they graduate, what they want to become, through either, like we talked about, we said icebreakers, right? Opportunities for them to tell you who they are, and also listening to our students, and then taking that information, making much more lesson hooks that are much more relatable, and assessment to become much more relatable. And then the scaffolding, right? The scaffolding, I think, is allowing the students to see the process of growth within the assignment itself, so that they see that there's a reason that they need to learn, that you're covering the foundations for a reason, and that everything is connected, and it leads to a final product. And with that, I'm going to stop and allow time for us to discuss and talk about, and for questions.
There's a question in the chat,
Oh.
just in case.
Oh, thank you, Lizette.
No problem.
Let me see if I can escape. I think I can't see
You
the
don't have
chat.
to answer it now, Jose. I was just, it's not necessarily something that everybody's going to be interested in.
Oops. Okay. Oh wait, I'm in the wrong place. No, I don't want to cancel. Um,
I do have one question, Lynn,
Sure.
also.
Sure.
Please, Jennifer, just go. Yeah.
Okay. So my question, in terms of integrating some of these tools, the AI tools, I teach a lot of first semester courses, specifically writing, and just like they have varying levels of familiarity with English, if I would, integrate some of these extra tools, I mean, how much can you assume they know?
Yeah.
Like what is fair in terms of assuming they know? Because I, like many, I've seen a lot of evidence of GAI in my classes, and I can see even in what they turn in, the disparity
Yeah.
of students who know how to use it well and students who don't. So would it, would we have to actually teach it? And specifically with first semester students, I think, is something I would be concerned about, that if I wouldn't integrate these, some of these tools, which I'm fine doing, I just don't, it's not my expertise. And I just worry about disparity between them even.
Yeah. I think, Jennifer, that's the $1 million question. I'm glad you asked, right? Because, right, yes, there's two parts to your question, right? So you talk about tools.
Mhm.
And a quick story. When I first was introduced to digital storytelling, I was at Columbia University, and we were invited into the classroom, and the professor was interested in incorporating digital storytelling into the classroom, but he needed an expert to teach the
Mhm.
class how to use these tools. And I'm
Mhm.
there and like, okay, now I'm supposed to teach and train some of these students how to record, edit the video, and do all this. I said, oh my gosh, we've been here for 2 to 3 hours and we're getting like minimal results, right?
Mhm.
And from there on, I quit. I said, I'm I'm never ever doing this again.
Mhm.
It's again, we're going away from the focus of what we want the students to actually learn, which was the actual subject matter. And it was just taking away too much time from the lecture and what they were needed to learn. And then several years later, I would say about 5 years, and then I eventually ended up at SUNY. And then I saw new tools that came out, and one of which was Adobe Express. And what I learned then was that there wasn't that a steep learning curve like Adobe Premiere and Final Cut. And then say, oh my gosh, it took me back to Columbia University days, and say, well, this is now I can actually bring it into the classroom. Learning the tool was so simple and easy. I created in the Padlet that I showed you the example.
Mhm.
The first column had the instruction video, and it was a 5-minute video, and that's all they had.
Mhm.
That was all that students had to, and
Mhm.
it was a 5-minute video, and I didn't
Yeah.
have to do it in the classroom. I didn't have to be invited into the classroom, because that video existed right then and there in the Padlet. And then the second part to your question, I think that is really crucial. I think we're seeing students who, yes, there's a difference in how they're using it. Some much more advanced,
Mhm.
and some have no idea what they're doing. But this
Mhm.
is the key. This is the key, and I think that once we as educators start to begin to integrate the generative AI into the assessments, into the assignments, and within the steps of those assignments, if we explain the process on how to use and how to prompt, and how to do the prompting and the iterative process of prompting,
Mhm.
and if we can figure out the alignment between what's happening in ChatGPT and what's happening within the assignment, and we could somehow bring those two together. And it's at the same time, we're teaching those students who have zero idea of what they're doing. And
Right.
now there's a reason why that, because right now no one's really doing this. So what are students doing? Well, no one's teaching me how to use this, so I'm just going to copy and paste and drop it in.
Right.
So there is that scaffolding that has to exist, and within that scaffolding of an assignment, that iterative process, as you're providing those instructions, you are including those steps. But you yourself, as an educator, have to understand and know how to use, because we can
Mhm.
assign it to the student, expect them to know, and we don't know what we're assigning, right? So we along also have to learn with our students.
Right.
Yeah. So I think you hit it. And it's a mountain we're climbing, because
Mhm.
every day something new is happening, and it's just every day something new. And then like, oh gosh. And then I asked myself the same question, Jennifer. I asked myself like, okay, so what happens when we reach that point where there is no opportunity for value added from the student's perspective?
Mhm.
What happens? You know, we
Yeah.
don't know where this is going.
Right.
It's so disruptive for us as educators right now that we are flying on the seat of our, that's what we say, seat of our pants. That's what we say.
Right. Mhm.
But yeah, so I love those two questions. Like, thank you
I
for
want
asking.
to add that they watch us.
And it,
They watch
Right.
us, and then it's almost like that they can at least feel a sense of like, hey, I'm collaborating with the teacher.
yeah.
She's learning, I'm learning, I'm telling her stuff. So there's something kind of,
There's something, and to add to that, Sarah, one thing I use, and I didn't want to bring it up in this presentation, but one thing I do use is I'm forgetting the author, A Pedagogy of the Oppressed.
Mm.
uh, Sorry, when I'm presenting, I lose some. But basically, the idea is, right, we have a professor, we have a student. Pedagogy of the Oppressed basically is, okay, well, the teacher is at the top of the pedestal. They know everything, and the information trickles down to the student. There's no transfer between student to teacher, only teacher to student. But as we introduce ChatGPT or this LLMs, large language models, into the classroom, it's now a triangle, right? Now we got three entities. We got the student, we got the teacher, and now we're bringing in this new entity, right? And so it becomes a three-way kind of triangle that um, we're all three learning from each other. There's a transfer of knowledge between all three, and that's the way I'm kind of. The only way I could describe it is this model is like a triangle where now three entities are existing in the classroom.
Mhm. Thank you.
Sure, thank you for that.
Thank you. I just have a quick question. Is there any more examples for the application in engineering education with artificial intelligence right now? Because we have a lot of practical projects, and for example, I try to use ChatGPT and to input one simple math problems, but the answer is a little strange. So there's any other implementations in engineering, especially for the mechanical engineering practice?
Yeah, you're also not scathed from uh, the consequences of using ChatGPT, because
Yeah.
as it doesn't just it's not just affecting the humanities. We're also
Mm.
seeing it where now I can have an app and take a picture of the math equation with my phone instantaneously, and there's my answer. But I think you have a little bit more of an advantage, I believe, because it's much more hands-on, practical, right? You have to.
Yes, exactly.
So I think, again, going back to the project-based learning, right?
Mm.
Bringing in some of that hands-on into the classroom, much more hands-on approach on assessments. I think that's where you have a little leverage over I feel so bad for the humanities sometimes, because it's all writing, right? And now you got to really think above and beyond, go even further, because they have a bigger challenge ahead of them. But I think you, coming from that field in that subject matter, as a subject matter expert in that field, I think there's a little bit much more. One thing that I'm planning to do is eventually we're going to receive a new feature in Brightspace, which is called the Learning Object Repository, the LOR or LOR. I think that's what they're calling it. And what I'm planning on doing is reaching out to people like you, the faculty, right? I'm looking to you as faculty members, leaders, and creating this community where you have something that you want to share, like an OER, an open education repository, an OER, and within Brightspace, it's called a LOR. And if we take these examples so that we can share amongst the community within CityTech and make that freely available to anyone who wants to share their work and what they're doing with, not only with AI, anything in particular. And then within Brightspace, you will be able to go into this market and see something that you might be interested, and then import it into your course. So that's another thing I'm really looking to do as we start to develop these and reimagine a lot of these assignments to with everything that's happening around us with technology. And so I hope that that could also help us grow as a community and get better at doing some of this and provide more examples.
Thanks so much.
Sure, thank you for the question.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we will have a break from our series moving forward. I mean, we have the Thanksgiving break, and then we have the winter break, and then eventually we will continue doing more workshops. Another thing, like I mentioned before, I don't know if you joined late, but we are recording these workshops and we're putting them into our YouTube channel, because I know I get a lot of emails like, Jose, I wish I could be there. I had another class to teach, or I had some other appointment, I couldn't make it. So we're putting all of these videos on our YouTube channel, so you can always go back and rewatch them. And another thing I want to say is that if you have an idea, something you want to share, right? Let me know, or a topic that you want to be covered, or a presentation that you want to lead, or showcase your course with faculty. This is what the elevatED workshops are about, is for us faculty educators to come together and create this community and help each other out. So I hope that these workshops are inspiring you to think outside of the box, and then to say, hey, maybe I want to present what I'm doing in my class and share what we're doing, or the difficulties, or the challenges, right? Not just solutions. Sometimes we want to share and just talk about it, because together we can resolve. It's easier when you have a community together. Community of practice is what I'm trying to get to. And then we can get together and talk about it and help each other. So don't be shy, and feel free to email me if you have any ideas and suggestions. I know, Sarah, I know we're working on something together. So so I just want to hear more of everyone at CityTech. I want to hear more, and so that we can you know, help each other out and build this community of practice. If there aren't any other questions before we're at the, wow, 3 minutes. Okay, pretty good. I think we went our last workshop, I think we went almost to 2 hours. But this is good. So if anybody has any comments before we close, or anything, okay. Well, thank you for joining me. I will send an email with some resources along with the slides, and then eventually the link will show up on our YouTube channel. It takes us a couple of days to add the branding, the intro and the outro. So give us about a week, and then we'll publish that on YouTube. I want to just thank you for taking your precious time to be with us today. I really appreciate you. And I hope that there's more collaboration in the future ahead of us, and we'll be able to work together and to, you know, figure our way out through this together. So take care, enjoy the weekend, and I hope to see you at the next workshop. Take care.